This is Stress in the Workplace presentation, Coastal Carolina, Professor Forbes, by Timothy Smith. Stress plates can be defined as the harmful physical emotional response that can happen when there's conflict between job demand on the employee and the amount of control one has meeting said demands. Within this definition of actual stress, can be any stress or strain placed on an object. So when you look at the human being, if there's stress placed on us, it can also have a detrimental effect. Stress can take two different forms, can be positive or negative, sometimes referred to as a challenge or a motivator. For positive, we want to strive to do better, such as sports players. We look at stress as, let me try to outperform the starter, that way I can start. Or it can take a negative if and if untreated, health problems can arise. Causes of stress within the workplace, it's dependent on everybody's personal approach to it. We can take stress as different when it comes to certain situations. Everyone handles stress differently. No two people are the same. We can evaluate one's stress level, and no people are the same. So when we look at it, we can do a primary appraisal and secondary appraisal. Primary appraisal is the first phase of stress evaluation within the workplace. Decisions are made to oneself about whether an event poses a threat or a harm. When I talk about threats, it's more of a potential of a poor job performance, or with if I don't do it well, guess what? I'll probably lose my job. A harm is a loss associated with a recent loss of a coworker, family member, or loss of a job from probably that threat of possibly losing my job if I don't do well on it. Secondary appraisals. This phase is the process that occurs when one's figuring out how to cope with a stressful event. We kind of see that there's going to be something stressful coming up in our job. Maybe we're tasked with a project that we weren't ready for. Maybe there's new management. Whatever the being may be, we can kind of see it happening. Well, it depends on our background. If we had a harmful event, death or loss of a job, this requires immediate coping techniques as the event already occurred. In the threatening portion of it, challenging events that do not require immediate action. As more information and time passes, coping styles change. This can be, as I was tasked with that project a week ago, I kind of feel a little bit more comfortable with it. Then I can move on and continue with that task and less stressful, sleeping more at night. Experiences in life in one position will determine how one copes with the stressful situation at hand. So, how much stress is really out there? Everybody deals with stress in their own way. If you have a job or a position of some sort of occupation, you're probably going to have some stressful situations. Well, Korn Ferry administered a survey consisting of 2,000 professionals of positions of all ranks. Basically, she went from the highest all the way to lowest in several different occupations. 76% said their work had stressed negative effects on their personal relationships, whether at home, at work, or of some sorts. 66% say that they have lost sleep due to work stress. 16% say they had to quit a job due to stress. In that same survey, they determined that stress has increased in the past 3 years of 20% or more. According to Korn Ferry's Institute, in the United States alone, only 30% of workers say they are highly engaged in their work employment. If you look at it in perspective, there's a lot of people who have occupations in this world. Only 30% of them say that they actually enjoy it. Let's look at the whole world. 15% of workers are enthusiastic about their profession and their workplace. the number of almost 8 billion people in this world, pretty shy, only having 15% who are actually enthusiastic. So this is a true matter. Very much attention needs to be placed on it, and some coping styles need to be addressed. So what are really causing that stress? In that same survey that Korn Ferry uh, administered, 35% employees put upper management as their source of stress. Their managers, their bosses, the owners of the company are placing more stress on the employees, which are making them unhappy or unenthusiastic about their position. 80% of them say that change in leadership, such as direct manager or some higher, causes that stress. Change of ownership, layoffs, stuff like that are causing more stress within that workplace. We can break down the cause of stress into 4 different categories: individual task demands, individual role demands, group demands, organizational demands. When we look at the individual task, we're looking at if they're overworked or underworked. Yes, I said underworked. They may not feel utilized as they should, in their opinion, so it can cause some kind of stress because they're not put to their potential. Also, we look at what kind of shift are they working? Are they working 8-hour days, 12-hour days, or in my case, when I was with the fire department, it was 24/48, which can cause a very stressful situation, sleepless nights, so on and so forth. We can also categorize quality or conditions of work. Are we outside? Are we inside? Do we have lack of AC? Are we crammed in a small cubicle with other people? Do we share an office, or are we isolated alone? Individual role demands, level of responsibility. Are we getting tasked with too much? Is our supervisors wanting us to do more? Difficulties balancing work and home lives. Seems to be number one. It is very difficult to separate work life with home life and family life. Group demands, relationships at work, supervisors, coworkers, and subordinates. Harassment in the workplace. This seems to be number one, especially in today's society. Harassment and violence. You have to be careful what you say, how you say it, and how you present it to people. The word offensive has become very, very popular in today's society. Organizational demands. Is our job secure? What if we screw up the next day? Are we guaranteed to have that position? Nothing in life is promised. You are very disposable. Nobody in this world is 100% confident in the ability to keep their job. And then unplanned change. Types of coping. When we figure out that we are stressed in the workplace, we have reactive coping. Refers to efforts to deal with stressful encounters. Pretty much, we realize that we have encountered a stressful situation, so let's figure out how we can deal with it. Anticipatory coping. This is when we realize something may be coming up. When you're tasked with that project, you may start feeling stressed, may starting to lose sleep. We can come up with different ways to figure out how to cope with that. Maybe we're preparing for an interview, downsizing, or even changing job positions. Preventative coping. Again, this kind of goes along with anticipatory. Basically, we're going to figure out how we can anticipate that future change. We would come up with different strategies to cope with that. And then proactive refers to a build up of general resources that facilitate movement towards challenging goals and personal growth. With that preventative coping, for myself, I know that I am going to college just in case that the career in the fire department doesn't pan out or I get hurt. I have a fallback plan. That way, in the event that I can no longer perform in my job duties, I can continue working. Management strategies. Relaxation response. This is a reactive style. Basically, our appraisal of our threat or harmful situation. Loss of failing to meet work goals, conflict, coworker, job loss. This style does very little to resolve underlying problems. I call it the Band-Aid response. It's a short-term fix. Martin Seligman developed a concept, two types of coping. You have optimistic people and pessimistic people. Pessimistic people tend to give up once they run into a task or a conflict. Optimistic people, they try harder to fix the solution. Same thing as looking at a glass half full or half empty. Optimism is positive thinking rather than different outlook to different situations. Optimism tends to look for good in life and work through problems rather than dwell on them. It's in the past, it's happened, how can I fix it, is the optimistic people. I tend to think that I look on the optimistic side of things. I use this a lot when it comes to workplace stress. Hardiness training comprises of building an employee's attitudes and commitment, control and challenge. Commitment, individual belief involving oneself in life changes, is a way to deepen meaning and purpose. Controls one belief that he or she tries or he or she can positively influence much of what happens in one's life. Challenge an individual's attitude that everything happens to him or her, whether negative or positive, is an opportunity to enhance one's performance. Again, you can read a little bit more about it. Within this, you are trying to take those negative effects, and instead of dwelling on them, you're trying to change them for the better and become more proficient at your job. Managing stress. Preventative. Try to identify the causes of stress with subordinates, supervisors, to mitigate the issues at hand before they get to the late signs where it starts causing detrimental health problems within oneself. Communication plays a huge role within any type of organization. If there is lack of communication, it's going to cause very stressful situations, not only for the employee, but also the employer. Practice the anticipatory. Each employee will deal with stress and workloads differently. Sit down with the employee or employer and try to work out what will work to help reduce the stress. We want to try to avoid reactive, but unfortunately in everyday society and work, we usually tend to address stress in a reactive way. Educate employees and coworkers on the signs of stress. Fast heart rate, sleepless nights, poor dietary, and lack of concentration are the first signs that you'll have within stress. And you will want to preach to avoid alcohol to cope with stress. Alcohol will only add into it. It doesn't really resolve it. Exercise and adequate diet will help reduce stress and better cope with stressful events. If you feel good about yourself, you're eating healthy, your body doesn't have to work harder to digest the fatty acids and stuff we're ingesting, then we can better cope with mental aspect of things. Within that, we need to work on basically addressing this issue with each employee. Figure out what works for you. Not one way is going to constantly work with everybody. Sit down with your employee and employer to figure out what best will mitigate your stress, and then we can continue to work on there, and hopefully we can increase those numbers from enthusiasm to work from 15% worldwide up to 30, maybe 50%. All we can do is keep moving forward and hope to have an optimistic attitude. Thank you for watching this, and hopefully you learned something. Thank you.